Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from the Highlands at Pittsford, an independent and assisted living community affiliated with the University of Rochester, offering cottage and apartment homes, daily life enrichment activities, and care assistance as needed. More at highlandsatpittsford.org.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made last night in a record-setting address to Congress made by President Trump for more than 90 minutes. The speech was lengthened in part because Trump freelanced some of his trademark asides into the script and got a lot of laugh lines. He called Senator Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. He lashed out at President Biden for the cost of eggs, which has soared to record levels in recent days. And he tossed in brief asides regarding foreign policy in places like Greenland. The White House script has Trump saying that the people of Greenland should determine their own future. But then in the chamber, he riffed and said, one way or another, we're going to get it. Republicans in the chamber laughed. There wasn't much news last night. Trump did not pull the United States out of NATO, as some predicted he might. Much of what he said reflected his promises from the campaign trail, although it is fair to point out that Trump did not campaign on taking Greenland or annexing Canada or taking ownership of Gaza. But the widespread tariffs, yes, he campaigned on that. Drill, baby, drill, he campaigned on that too. Cutting off funding to Ukraine and pushing a ceasefire based on giving Russia a number of concessions, that was all on the ballot. Democrats could not seem to figure out what to do last night. Some didn't show up. Others, like Senator Bernie Sanders, walked out when Trump dropped the Pocahontas slur. Still others waved canes or held up signs with various messages. Some sounded quite similar in the way that Congresswoman Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene acted when Joe Biden was in the presidency. This hour, we have a conversation about what we heard last night and what comes next. Republicans continue to support President Trump in massive numbers, and they see a lot of change and they like it. Democrats are struggling to coalesce around a strategy. Writing for The Atlantic, former Republican staffer Tom Nichols says Democrats are acting weakly. He was critical of Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan, who gave the Democratic response last night. Nichols writes, quote, Slotkin's address suffered from the same half-heartedness that has seized the Democrats since last November. Her response and the behavior of the Democrats in general showed that they still fear being a full-throated opposition party because they believe they will alienate voters who will somehow be offended at them for taking a stand against Trump's schemes, end quote. And Nichols has written that for all their bluster, Democrats have never really acted like Trump was a real emergency. Otherwise, he says, they would have made sure President Biden never tried to run again, and they would have chosen a much stronger presidential candidate for last November. Our guests are here to discuss where we are and where we're going next. In studio with me is a former congressional candidate, Greg Sadwick, who is also a local business person. Greg, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Evan. It's good to be with you again. We got some good stuff to talk about today.
A lot to talk about. Jerry Lynn Sparks is on the line with us, a former congressional press secretary. Jerry, welcome back to the program to you.
Thank you for having me.
Greg, I'll start with you. Long address last night, and he was rolling. He was getting a lot of laugh lines. It was a kind of a raucous occasion. What did you hear? What stands out to you?
Well, I think he did awesome, as you could imagine. Okay, I think he did some things that were really good. You know, he's 45 days. I mean, in your line of work, Evan, you're looking for news to keep your news station.
Well, we've had a lot.
And you have so much stuff right now. It's amazing.
Okay.
And I think he outlined that very nicely. Some of it is fabulous. Some of it maybe not so much. Some of it not tested as much. But overall, stuff is being done. And the gridlock in Washington has gone on for too long. It's nice to see something being done.
The tariffs on Canada, Mexico, Europe, you're a business person. How do you feel about those?
You know, I think he might be overplaying his hand a little bit, to be frank. But I also like the fact that he's, reciprocal tariffs are not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, why are we hurting ourselves by increasing the cost of our goods overseas, and then we're allowing those goods to come in here, and it impacts the trade balance, it impacts employment. So some of them I'm good with, but I think he does overplay it a little too much.
It seems that the market, which is down, 1,300 points in 2 days, has responded negatively to the tariffs. Do you think this is a situation where there has to be short-term pain in order to reset the kind of trade balance you want?
Yeah, and thanks for saying that, because America is at a point where we do have to have a little short-term gain because things are so far out of balance.
Short-term pain?
Thank you. Short-term pain.
Okay.
Short-term pain because things are so far out of balance. The path we're on isn't necessarily sustainable. What, do we let the trade balance keep growing? Do we let jobs keep going overseas? I'm all for some short-term pain.
But why not? Why doesn't the market dislike it so much? I mean, Trump has said for years, Trump tweeted in 2012 when Barack Obama was president and the market dropped 1,200 points in 2 days. He said, anytime the market drops more than 1,000 points in 2 days, whoever is president should be impeached. I think he doesn't believe that anymore, but I'm curious to know why you think the markets have responded so negatively.
Well, I think the markets are somewhat short term. Although the markets are over the course of the long haul, the emotional reaction in the short term, I think, sometimes plays negatively on the markets, and that's what we're seeing.
Trump did not campaign, though, on short-term pain. He said,
he said day one.
Day one,
he said
things are
day
gonna
one.
be perfect.
Yeah, and that's a Trumpism. But we're smart guys, and your listeners are smart listeners, and they know that it takes a lot to move this ship, to turn to a different course, and it's going to take some time.
All right, Jerry, so from opening thoughts from you, what did you hear last night?
So I obviously was not impressed. I thought that there was a lot of divisive rhetoric and a lot of untruths. There was so much that was unnecessary, and I feel like, as you said, Trump did not campaign on short-term pain. He said, you're going to see an improved economy and the price of eggs and the price of gas, everything's going to be better. And he constantly says, like you've never seen before. I still haven't seen it. The price of eggs are going up. And, I agree with some of what Greg said. I think Trump absolutely overplayed his hand on the tariffs, which are going to hurt all Americans. And the thing is, we don't have American voters, American people don't have the luxury of short-term pain. They were struggling before, and that's how a lot of reasons why Trump got into office to begin with. So I think there's kind of not really an elitist on purpose, but that's an elitist viewpoint, thinking that we have to suffer through short-term pain when people are already having trouble paying the heat, buying gas, and buying groceries. It's not something that's sustainable.
Jerry, in general, do you agree with the criticism of Democrats? That Democrats have been meek, that they've been disorganized, that there hasn't been a cohesive strategy to deal with this, that the party looks adrift?
Absolutely, I agree with you. I am turning backflips on my couch, just waiting for something to be done. And I feel like that so I worked under Nancy Pelosi. She was the Speaker of the House when I was a press secretary. And every morning we would get the day's messaging and the talking points. And we didn't have to follow that. We have districts that we represent, and they're very different across the country. But she gave a messaging that was very tight. And she also worked with the members of Congress to say, do what you need to do for your district. And then she would do a really good job, in my opinion, of working across the aisle to pass things. What I'm seeing right now from Hakeem Jeffries is he's not up to the job. Super nice guy, but this is a time for strong leadership. And, the way Barack Obama and Bill Clinton came into office because they were great messengers and they were great organizers. And Democrats are sorely missing that right now.
So when you say Speaker Hakeem Jeffries is not up to the job, and you say you're waiting for Democrats to do something, for your party to do something, tell me a little bit more about that. What is Jeffries not doing? What is the party not doing?
So let's give an example. He comes out and says that he has no problems with Governor Andrew Cuomo running for mayor of New York City. This is a man who has lots of legal problems, and he doesn't have the backbone to stand up for that. He's not organizing the team. Last night, when all the members of Congress lined in, there was no cohesive message with the Democrats. They sent tersely worded emails and had photo ops before the meetings, and some of them, walked out. But there was no cohesiveness in their messaging. They should have had. Here's the things I think they should have done. I think they should have had a national combined town hall at the same time. A few people like Senator Chris Murphy did that. I think they should take out billboards and have in Times Square, all the different things that they actually stand for. I think that they should have no more of these, little photo ops where they're wringing their hands, but they actually have to have a policy response, an official policy response to Project 2025. And I think they also need to make sure that they run candidates that are popular. Vice President Kamala Harris didn't win the primary. She didn't even come close. She dropped out before it got there.
In 2019.
And she was brought in the back doorway. And then she did the same thing. Not that she did this, but the same thing happened when she was anointed the candidate for president. So this is a candidate for president that had never won a popular vote at the national level, and we expect that to win. Democrats have got to start playing and leaning into their strengths instead of constantly trying to kowtow about who they are. And, at this point, I feel like that old philosophy exercise where you've got the motorcycle in the garage, and every night a thief comes in and steals a piece, and he starts rebuilding it in his own garage. When do we find that we've lost our democracy? That each night a piece of it's being stolen.
Well, we're going to come back to Jerry in a second because Jerry has ideas that I want to explore a little bit more about what you want to see. You mentioned more town halls, more activity. We'll talk about that in a second. And listeners, if you want to join the conversation, you can email the program, connections@wxxi.org, connections@wxxi.org. If you're watching along on the WXXI News YouTube feed, hello there. You can join the chat on the YouTube chat there. Or you can call the program toll-free, 844-295-TALK. It's 844-295-8255. 263-WXXI if you're in Rochester, 263-9994. Greg, when you talk about the economy, there's this idea that a lot of Republicans have, and it sounds like this. Democrats got too focused on the social issues, and Republicans focused on the lunch bucket issues. And Donald Trump won on that, and Democrats got away from that. And so part of what you're hearing Jerry talk about is she's kind of agreeing with that the Democrats have to claim an identity and reclaim some turf there. So when it comes to the economy, you're a supporter of this president. What's realistic here? We do have record high prices in food. Eggs, as high as they were under Biden, they're a lot higher now. Gas prices are going up. Prices are going up with tariffs. What's realistic here? In your mind, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years out, what do you expect to see? And what has to happen for Republicans to keep winning on that turf?
Okay, that's a great question because it isn't going to happen overnight. Part of his whole economic model is built on the drill, baby, drill. We got the liquid gold under our feet, and that's not going to turn around in 45 days. So that's a component of his strategy that we need to, that's going to take some time to do. It's kind of ironic that for 4 years we were told it was transitory inflation and no one really cared about it on the Democrat side. Now all of a sudden, 45 days into this administration, it's, now it's a big issue, which it is a big issue. But I wish it would have been a big issue 4 years ago as well. Okay, the egg crisis you mentioned. I think you're well aware that the Biden administration killed the chickens that were laying the eggs, and that's part of the problem. And we shouldn't be. I didn't like the fact that Trump blamed that on Biden. To be frank with you, because there's things that are, if there's bird flu and we're killing the birds, well, that's what's got to happen. But it's going to take time for tariffs is a negotiating tool. So how long is tariffs going to be enacted for? We don't know that. We know Trump's a master negotiator.
I don't think we know that, do we?
Well,
what's an example of a good deal he's ever cut?
Bring me back in a month when the Ukraine war is over. It's been going on for 3 years, 4 years has been. We've sacrificed our tax dollars. We've sacrificed Ukrainian lives. We sacrificed part of our arsenal. Okay, there's no good solution there. So why are we continuing with no good solution? I know we're getting off topic here. You want to talk more about the economy?
No. We'll come back to the economy, but on this notion of he definitely wants to be seen as a great deal maker. His own reality is quite different. In business, he did a pretty bad job for years, despite being propped up by family, and then becomes this sort of financial monster. And his deal usually sounds like this. He calls a company and says, "Thanks for building the doors on our building. We're going to pay you 50%. Try to sue us." And people go, "Oh, he's so smart. He runs people over." Isn't a good deal supposed to be good for both sides? The idea that Trump has is that a deal is when you run people over. And now he wants to have this idea that, he's going to be the chief deal maker with Ukraine and Russia. And one of the things I find fascinating is, and this is what made Zelensky, I think, lose it last week, understandably so. Zelensky and Ukraine keep being told you're going to have to give up a third of your country. You're going to have to give up mineral rights and money. You're going to have to give up NATO membership. You're going to have to give up security guarantees. Russia, what do you have to give up? Nobody can answer that, Greg. So it's bizarre to say this guy is a master negotiator when he's already given the store to the guy with the nuclear weapons who did the invasion, unless I'm missing something. Help me see this.
Okay, so I got 2 points on that one.
Yeah.
One is, again, nothing was happening for 3 years, and we were continuing to lose lives. So we can stay on that same path and have another Afghanistan. He's trying to prevent that. Okay, the other aspect is there's a bigger piece to this puzzle that I think is more critical than Russia, and that's China. And I believe that Trump is trying to pull Putin over closer to us than to China, because China is our biggest threat. He's trying to get Europe to take care of their own backyard so that Big Brother can go take care of the bigger problem in the world in the Pacific. And I think that's part of his master strategy. Well, I don't think it is. He's been pretty open about that. That's part of his strategy.
He's going to pull Russia toward us so that what? When China takes Taiwan and they know that we're just going to let them, Russia will intervene on our behalf? What happens here?
It's keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Would you rather have Russia on our side or on China's side?
I would rather not be in league with autocrats. I'd rather have standards that say, if you come into my house and you try to burn the whole thing down, and after 3 years you're still living in the basement and the living room, the solution is not to say, okay, I guess you get a third of my house. Please don't burn down the rest of it.
So you're good with a prolonged war then? Because really, that's the only other option.
No, I think that's a straw man, and that's what Marco Rubio's been saying. Secretary Rubio's been using the same tactic. Nobody wants a prolonged war. Why is everybody blaming anybody but Putin here? The prolonged war could be over tomorrow if Vladimir Putin chose it, right? You agree with that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So why is it on Zelensky to say, well, give away a third of your house, man? They broke in and you don't have enough weapons to keep fighting them off. Do you think he's done? Do you think that Putin says, hey, thank you for a third of the country. Thank you for humiliating Zelensky and giving me this big victory. I'm good now. I don't want any more. I think I'm fine.
I think Trump's tactic of developing a economic relationship to where we are embedded in Ukraine gives us that without putting boots on the ground. I'm not for boots on the ground. It sounds like you might be, because either a prolonged war or boots on the ground or bringing this to an end.
No, I want to see an end. And I also, what I like about Trump is that he talks often about the biggest threat the world faces, which is nuclear catastrophe. One weapon flies and it's probably over. I mean, then 500 fly. And then where are we? It's over. I understand that. At the same time, the person with the weapons, if they're going to march anywhere they want and just say, well, we got the stockpile. Because if Russia didn't have nuclear weapons, none of this would be happening. None of it. This would be done. But they do. So, and everyone's nervous about that. So a question of what to do is nuanced. You're not wrong about that. This is not easy. But how much of this starts to look like Neville Chamberlain to you? Do you think this looks like Chamberlain?
No, because I don't think Trump's a Neville Chamberlain.
Okay.
And I also think I'm not sticking up for Putin, but if we put ourselves in his shoes, you look at the Black Sea, where NATO wasn't supposed to encroach on the Black Sea, and now 5 of the 7 countries around the Black Sea are now NATO countries, and now a 6th possibly NATO is going to be. If that were us, we'd be upset too, just like we did with the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1961, was it? You come into our backyard, we got a problem with that. How far would we have gone with that?
What NATO country has invaded Russia? What NATO country has fired weapons into Russia?
Going back to 1961, Cuba didn't invade us. Why was JFK so adamant about not having Russia there? Which I agree with, by the way. I'm not saying that was wrong.
I hear you.
I agree with that. But we're condemning that leader for the same things we do.
I think when you say I'm not defending Putin, but it sounds like you're defending Putin.
Well, it may sound like that, but I'm not. Okay? It may sound like that, I'm not.
But
Putin's a thug, okay? Putin's a thug. Absolutely.
It sounds like you think the invasion of Ukraine was reasonable.
No, I don't.
Okay.
But again, going back to options that have no emotion in them.
Yeah.
You either have a prolonged war, which I'm not for, or you're all in with boots on the ground. I'm not for that either. So there's got to be some negotiated settlement. Those are the only options. Evan, let me ask you, what is the option then? What do you see?
I see.
Let them keep fighting?
Well, I see a situation where if you're actually going to negotiate, you have to ask both parties to give something up. No one's asked Putin to give up anything. What is he being asked to give up? It is not master negotiating to say, hey, dude, you get everything you want here and you get to declare victory on your propaganda channel, which they're already doing and laughing at us. So what are they being asked to give up? What's the answer?
They're asking to end the war. They've taken territory. I'm not saying it's rightfully theirs, but they have that card in their hand.
So they don't have to give anything up.
Well, I don't know what Trump's proposed to them.
Okay.
I mean, he's trying to get both to the table. We're kind of jumping the race here a little bit.
Actually, he created a table without Ukraine, which kind of upset Zelensky, understandably so. I think they should probably be at the table, don't you?
Well, I think he's trying to get Zelensky to the table.
Okay.
He's getting agreement with both of them to get to the table.
Were you okay with how Zelensky was treated in the Oval Office last week?
I thought that was a little over the top. Yeah, I'll go with that. I mean, I like the fact that Trump was firm, but I think that was a little too far.
Okay. All right. So let's leave that aside. I mean, and part of the reason I think we have to talk about this is this kind of drives people pull their hair out. But you have to understand Trump has a firm grip on the Republican Party. He's very popular. Democrats are looking at the last 6 weeks going, well, this is not going to be a long presidency. Well, there hasn't been any erosion of support on the Republican side. And so it's good to know how people are viewing this, because right now, Trump holds the cards, to use the phrase that he used in the Oval Office last week.
Which I don't think Zelensky understood that phrase, but yeah.
I think he did, actually. I think when he said this is not a game, I thought he did understand. Jerry Lynn Sparks, okay. Now, I want to pivot here a bit here. So you want to take the message, in your view, Democrats have to take the message to districts around the country in a different way. And Congressman Joe Morelli, for example, he held a virtual town hall. And we see some Republicans doing town halls, although they're canceling some of those after some kind of got a little raucous. But what do you want to see? What's the action plan that you want Democrats to undertake here?
So, excuse me, let's expand upon that. So they need targeted messaging. And I think it frustrates the people who are donating to things like Act Blue when they're asking for more money, when they keep wasting it. But I want to point out one thing. Trump does not have the vast majority of Americans. It was 33% of people in America, because not everybody voted. So it's not like the vast majority of Americans are supporting him. So when you say that he's popular, let's really qualify that with actual numbers, first of all. Also, for the voting public, he won by 1.5%? There's no mandate there. And another thing I want to say, he's not a master negotiator. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he had his first million given to him by his father. So he landed at home plate and thinks but he was born on third. So I just want to really level set in what we're dealing with here. He is president because he was on The Apprentice, and people like to have a president that they want to have a beer with. He's got an outgoing personality, and people are drawn to that. I think that now that they're seeing the reality of it, you're seeing those town halls where people are angry. The way I became a press secretary in Congress was because Representative Randy Cool down in the Southern Tier locked his doors and didn't let the constituents in, and our campaign took advantage of that, and we ran with it. We showed ourselves to be of the people, for the people, by the people. We didn't wrap ourselves in the cozy blanket of complacency that seems to be invading the Democratic Party right now. They need to get out of Washington, D.C., and out into their districts. They need new leadership. Hakeem Jeffries has to go, and they need someone that's on fire and not comfortable. He's like that phrase, no drama Obama. This is not a time for that. This is not a normal time. Rome is burning, and we need a concentrated fire hose. And if you want some specifics.
Well, and so is there anybody, you've been critical of a number of people in your own party. Is there anybody doing it in a way that you think is effective?
Yes. I think it's probably going to be divisive just the moment I say her name, but I think Elizabeth Warren she has such a great economic background, and she's incredibly intelligent, but because she's a woman, she's villainized. And, as a person, I'm a strong woman. I take up space. I take up space in the intellectual sphere when I go into a room. I'm not going to be put in the corner and told to be silent. And I think that that's really scary to some people. If you look at the people the Democrats have put to run against Trump, it was Hillary and Harris. And I think that there's a thinking that, well, women can't win the presidency. That's not true. We just need to find candidates that are likable, and actually are vetted and win that popular vote. That's how you get there. So I think that's the first thing, is just really making sure the candidates are vetted. You can't backdoor your way to the presidency. You just can't. So that's one thing. And I think we also need to go out and look at the young disaffected voters. I have 4 children, and they're all so disaffected right now. They are just ready to just jump from the party. I had 3 friends last night that posted on social media that they were so frustrated with the milquetoast response of the Democratic Party last night. They left the party. They're no longer in the party. And
they're quitting the Democratic Party.
Yeah, somebody actually, but I'll talk to you about that offline.
I don't.
But they're done. They're done. And it's really shocking to me to see this not getting the message. One of the things about the congressional office that I was in, we had more press clips than any other freshman member of Congress. And why was that? Because we understood, one, we're in an R+4 district. We were in NY29. So we understood, like, you've got to get out there and be amongst your constituents all the time. No insulating yourself down in Washington, D.C. The congressman came home every single weekend, and he worked so hard. And yes, he had issues, but he was absolutely about constituent services. That's what really, he always would say that, constituent services, constituent services. And the reason he said that, when he was a Navy veteran, he understood how to stay organized and focused. He taught me so much that I use still to this day about organization and focus. So he understood the messaging. How did he understand the messaging? He was out there amongst the people in his district, and that's really important. I think the Republicans are making a mistake by not having those town halls. They're going to suffer in the midterm elections.
So one other point on what you want to see in different districts here. So you raised the point that when you worked for Congressman Eric Massa at the time, you were in a very hard district for Democrats to win, and you won.
Yep.
And you said that even though there were Democratic talking points sent from the national office, there was this understanding that if you're in a district that's, more centrist or tougher, that you may go a different way, that the messaging may be different. And one of the criticisms I'm seeing of, I don't know about criticisms, Republicans are pretty happy with their position, but certainly there are some Republicans in R+50 districts, and there's Republicans in R+1, and that's not all the same, just as you, Jerry, worked in a very difficult district for a Democrat. And Republicans there's a kind of a dancing in the end zone. It's a pretty festive time in the Republican Party, but do you see an opening for Democrats based on, the fact that there's going to be a midterm and there's going to be an evaluation on not only Trump, but also how Republican members of Congress are responding to different issues? I don't see a lot of dissent in the Republican Party. I don't see dissent on tariffs. I don't see dissent on we're going to take Greenland, I guess. I mean, I don't think there's dissent on anything, even though I think Greg Sadwick might dissent on that one. But go ahead, Jerry.
I would say this. So, the old saying, Republicans fall in line, Democrats fall in love. And I think that Republicans are, ever since I can remember, really good with their messaging, whereas Democrats tend to see, the gradations of things, the gray areas, and so they don't have that black and white thinking. And that's good and bad depending on your scenario. But right now, like I said earlier, Rome is burning. And so with Pelosi, so she would send, every Monday morning we'd get the talking points for the week. I think maybe one or two times the entire, 14, 16 months that Massa was in office, I think maybe one or two times I did a copy paste of her press release, and it was on something, minor. I always made the press release what was going on in our district, and it really resonated with the voters. We held, and I organized them. We held more town halls than any other freshman member of Congress. I was in charge of all of them. I went all over the district, from Rochester to Corning, just everywhere. All these little towns, I know about them because I personally went there. And what that did was it gave us a connection to what the real issues were. We had a robust constituent services team. Our office in Pittsford was constantly a revolving door of people coming in and talking about what mattered to them. And I think that's one thing that we've lost here. So, and then Massa, he told me that he met with Pelosi. He said, look, I can't go by everything you're saying. My district does not look like what you're saying. She got it, and she really understood that at the end of the day, you're a representative. It doesn't mean that you have to do, every single thing that your constituents say, because you've got a diverse constituency. Joe Morelli enjoys a Democratic advantage in his district now, which we did not enjoy that. It was really a tough time for us. And I did see him personally start speaking out last night, and I was really happy to see that. I called his office. I've left messages, but there still has to be more. And I really do think it starts with just really changing leadership. I think, and we really have to have some type of youth movement. We're just not speaking to the people that are the next
generation. Are you
saying
Chuck Schumer's not doing it anymore, Jerry?
I'm saying Chuck Schumer's not doing it. I'm not afraid to say that. So I'm sorry, Chuck. It's time for somebody else.
You and Jon Stewart are just not fans of Senator Schumer. Jose in Rochester.
I'm not a fan of his. It's just his time is over.
Jose in Rochester wants to differ with Jerry's point that we need more town halls. Jose says people don't want more town halls. Hey, Jose, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time. Yeah, I'm just tired of all the talk, the talking points, the town halls, paying for another study. What we have seen in the past 45 days is action, and that's what we voted for. I'm a Democrat that voted for Donald Trump because I said I want to see this action take place. And that's what we've seen. Everything he has done, we've voted for. So if we sit here and say Democrats need a cohesive talking points, a cohesive, actionable item, there's no action behind it. Give us action. Show us something.
Jose, did we vote to fire the veterans that voted for Trump? Because that's what happened. Did we vote for that?
Did we vote for what with veterans? I'm sorry?
Did we vote to fire the veterans? Because Trump fired veterans who voted for him.
Well,
I'm a veteran. I'm not starving.
I mean, I think you mean Elon Musk did some firing there, Jerry.
Well, so he's acting in the honor of the president. So veterans were fired under the DOGE program, which Donald Trump asked him to run.
But hold on. Did we not? Did we not fire a bunch of military personnel for getting a vaccine?
Well, I answered your question.
That was us.
Don't deflect. Did we vote for veterans getting fired?
We didn't vote for mandating vaccines and requiring that, or else you get fired.
So the answer is no. We did not vote for veterans getting fired.
Actually, we did. We voted for making the government more efficient. Okay,
That's
making the
not
government
the
more
same.
efficient. I mean, just because I'm a veteran
That's such
too.
a-
Just because I'm a veteran doesn't mean I get lifelong employment with the government.
So, Jerry, hold on one second here. I'm going to follow this point with Greg. Jose, thank you for that. And I'm going to follow the point with Greg, and then I'll come back to Jerry. So what you are talking about with DOGE is you're happy to see so far what you've seen from DOGE, yes?
We've heard from both sides, both parties, that they're going to streamline government. It never, ever happens. It's good that it's finally happening. That's what's good for the economy.
Chaos.
Well,
There's a difference between streamlining and chaos. This is chaos cutting.
I'm not going to disagree with that, Jerry, but there's a difference between action and inaction, and there's been inaction for the last 20 years.
Well, so a couple things with that. Number one, would you have been good if we said, George Soros, you get a team of 5 20-year-olds and you get to cut whatever you want. You're not elected. You're not even an American. But go for it, dude. Would you have been good with that?
I can't say I would have been good or not good with it. I would have been, if someone was doing something, I would have had a little angst with, I would have had angst with George Soros. But the fact
I
that we were
suspect so.
trimming the budget because we were $36 trillion in debt, and I know that that's a big issue for this country. Something's got to be done.
So your claim is that Elon Musk has now put us on a path to reducing the debt.
No, something is being done to control spending. Something is being done to control all. I mean, should I go through the list that Donald Trump listed yesterday with all of wasted spending?
I'm going to
that was incredible.
I'm going to give you an example of some of what Donald Trump said last night.
Okay.
He said $8 million for making mice transgender. He got a good laugh out of that. That's not a real thing. Transgenic. $8 million spent on making mice transgenic. It's not the same as transgender. A little fact checking would have been helpful. Transgenic means altering DNA for research purposes. In this case, research that could help cure human being diseases. So you may not like that. You may not want that money spent, but it has nothing to do with transgender mice. And it got a good laugh, but I'm a little disturbed that the chief executive of this country couldn't fact check for 5 seconds there. He also told another lie about Social Security. They have been lying about Social Security for weeks now. There are not 300-year-olds or 200-year-olds or 150-year-olds getting paid Social Security checks. They exist in the database. It doesn't mean they're getting checks. Why does the president keep lying about that, and why are you not bothered by that?
Well, I agree with you on that. That's a problem that we have. What was the number? 3 million people in the system? But yeah, we got to find out who's getting paid and who isn't before it's a real issue.
No, we know who's getting paid. There is waste every year to the tune of about $7-8 billion. It's a lot. There's $1 trillion of payouts annually from Social Security. Just under 1% is wasted. It's not good. This has been studied. This is not new. And then Elon Musk, who hasn't done any homework, comes in, sees 5 seconds of charts, and is like, "Oh, I think 300-year-olds are getting paid." And now the president is saying this on national television, and we're all like, "Well, we're doing something." I don't know what that is, Greg. What is that?
So those are good
Can I weigh
examples.
in
What about
here?
other examples, like the $1.9 billion that goes to Stacey Abrams' NGO that the previous year earned about $1,000 on their P&L? I mean, so there are other examples. So we can go back and forth. Finally, something is being done. Okay, that's the important
Can
part.
I
Go ahead,
can I weigh
Jerry.
in
Yeah, go
here?
ahead, Jerry. Yeah.
Okay, so I have 3 points to make. My first point is that the way that Greg is justifying this, so let's say I need to cut out $3,000 from my monthly expenses. It would be akin to me just going blindly in there and hitting stop payment on bills without looking at what they're for. So the DOGE cuts are actually cutting agencies without understanding what it is these agencies actually do. And so they cut nuclear scientists. Are you kidding me? Does America feel great again? Does America feel safe again? That's one thing. You need to have targeted cuts. And two, the Social Security thing happened because the Trump youngsters, DOGE youngsters didn't understand that the program was written in COBOL, which is an old code that substitutes, I think, the birth year 1825 or something. And so that made it look like people who had already, gotten checks. But those were where there were blanks in the system. It's just a technicality, and there's nobody in that list that was getting paid. And then the third point is for a person who is out there claiming about all the inefficiency, Musk is getting $8 million a day from our government. Think about that, $8 million a day. Yet we cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, fire veterans, cut park rangers. Like this summer, good luck going to Yosemite or any other national park. These are not targeted intellectual changes to the government. This is just throwing a bomb into your bank account and, indiscriminately canceling your heat that month.
I got to look up $8 million a day he's getting in cash.
I haven't seen. I don't know.
He's getting Elon Musk getting a check to him $8 million a day.
He gets $8 million in benefits a day from this government.
And benefits.
You can look it up.
Okay, so
So his agencies, you got Starlink grants, you've got Tesla incentives.
Okay, so he's
and then
providing a
also
service.
Take a look at it. Do a deeper dive on that. But the other thing is to go in here and say that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme was really upsetting for me to see that. We all pay into that. This is a managed fund. It isn't something that's like a high risk thing. So over and over, Elon Musk shows he doesn't understand this country. He never fought for this country. Trump never fought for this country. He's claimed bone spurs, yet he golfs all the time. And then we look at the money that we spend for Trump to go to play golf. If you wanted to cut out inefficiency, cut out the things that he and Musk are actually doing.
Okay, so a couple things there for Greg. Number one, as an efficiency guy, he does spend a lot of taxpayer dollars on golf. That's true. I mean, a lot more than Biden and Obama, and they got criticized by Republicans for golfing. You want to see him golf less?
I want to see him do his job.
Okay.
Yeah, probably golf less.
Okay.
But I understand he'd pay for his own security detail at the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say.
Two other points on spending, though. You're not wrong that people have been saying for years, well, we got to get this under control, and then neither party has gotten it under control. We're going to see when the budget numbers come out later this year what the next budget really looks like, because Republicans are in position to pass more tax cuts. They want to do that. They say it's going to spark business, et cetera, et cetera. But nothing that DOGE is doing is touching the big cash cows. The federal government, it's the military, Medicaid, Medicare. Now, Trump has said Medicare is not getting touched. The Trump team has talked about reducing 6%, maybe more long-term on military. We'll see. That's a lot of money. And this idea of Medicaid, it's not clear what could get touched, although that's already kind of being kicked around. Do you want to see any of those programs get cut? Because that's where all the money really is here.
Yeah, I think we could agree that the military could be more efficient. Okay,
so some cuts there would be good?
Processes,
Yeah.
Whatever goes on, and same with Medicare. There's ways to economize without cutting benefits, and I believe that's what they're trying to get to. And even with Social Security, if I could go back to the Ponzi scheme comment.
Yeah.
I've paid in Social Security for the last 35 years, and I'm being told it may not be there in 10 years when I retire. If that's not the definition of a Ponzi scheme, I don't know what is. So, there are some troubles with Social Security.
We heard that 20 years ago about Social Security. I've heard that my whole life. Social Security is not going to be there when
substitute Social Security for climate change. It's the same arguments we just keep hearing over and over and over. But I would agree with your comment there.
I don't know what climate change has to do with it.
Because we hear those stories for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
We're seeing climate change. You're not worried about climate change?
The question about climate change is, are we contributing to it, or is it a normal phenomenon?
That is a question you could ask. It's been answered pretty well, hasn't it?
By the studies that have been done by groups that are getting money from the USAID, yes, we would conclude that.
All right, one other point here, because Jerry mentioned the kind of cuts that have either affected veterans or aid, and a couple of listeners have sent notes to us on our YouTube channel about USAID. So USAID is an organization that seeks to do all kinds of humanitarian missions around the world, and now the courts are intervening literally, I think, today on this. But set that aside. this idea of cutting USAID, you want to battle China. Soft power is wielded through USAID. The idea that we're going to have malaria nets. We're going to try to cure diseases. We're going to have food for people who are starving around the world. And that's going to be our flag on that. And we're going to have that, not only the humanitarian, the moral high ground, but also the soft power that can come with that. Well, now we're pulling back. Guess who's moving in? China's moving in on that. Is that a healthy development?
Depending on what the initiative is. Going back to Jerry Lynn's example about you just don't go into your budget and take things out blindly, but you also don't have a budget that has things in that are blindly or that are blind. So we got to understand where that money's going. Is it going to, is it really getting to the people that we want it to get to, or is it being funneled back through some other channel for uses that are not what its intended use was for? So we need to look at that. And that's the funny part. To suggest we got to look at that gets people all upset. I mean, why are we upset that we're looking into these budget items?
I think it's, wow, I'm really late for a break. It's been kind of a wild hour here. But no, I'm with you, Greg. It should never offend anybody to say, we just want to look at the budget here. We want to look at what we're spending on, right? We should all do that. Everybody should do that. I think that what offends people is before they even looked, they started cutting it. And then they're like, oh, we didn't mean to fire the people who work on nuclear weapons security in this country. Can you come back? And then it looks like, well, you're not looking at the budget. You're just throwing darts at a budget. I think that's what is bothering people.
Yeah, and it was Elise Slotnick when she said, she had a good phrase. It was, I think she had reckless in there. Oh, reasonable change versus reckless change was her comment. And I would agree with that.
You want reasonable change.
I want reasonable change, but more importantly, I want change.
Okay.
Okay, we have not had change for 20 years.
So a question for you as we go to break here. You say that you want the reasonable change and it has to be cutting. We've said we're going to cut forever. Now we're actually cutting. You said you want to see action. They're actually doing it. When we see the budget this year, if there is not a balanced budget or a surplus, is it a failure? Because they say that's what we're doing. That's what this is all for.
If we are directionally getting to a balanced budget, if we can't do it this year, but we're heading in the right direction, we're going to do it in 2027, I mean, that's a win.
If we have another large deficit, is it a failure?
It depends on where that, if we're not slowing down the rate, if we're not slowing down the rate of the increase, that's a failure.
So reasonably, you said we don't have
to
to get all the way here, but you got to take steps to get there.
Correctly. Yep.
Greg Sadwick is my guest in studio. He is a former congressional candidate. I tried to get out of him again if he's going to run again, but maybe that's a decision for the future. He's a local business person. That's what he is right now. Jerry Lynn Sparks is on the line with us, a former congressional press secretary. We are way late for our only break. We're going to take it. We'll come right back on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from City Magazine, covering arts and culture in the greater Rochester community since 1971. On the web daily and in print monthly. More at roccitymag.com. City, arts, music, culture.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Ethan emails the program and wants to know who Jerry thinks Democrats can point to as a possible next contender. And Ethan says, no more retreads. What do you think, Jerry Lynn Sparks?
A possible next contender, I like Governor Andy Beshears out of Kentucky. I like him a whole lot. And I also like Gretchen Whitmer.
Out of Michigan,
these are both governors. I like governors, and here's why I like governors. They've actually run a budget of a state. They make the best presidents. If you look historically at our best presidents, the most effective ones who managed the country well were governors. Bill Clinton ran the country, I think, for some reasons really well. He was a governor. So I really do think those two. I've been keeping my eye on them.
Jerry, what about Josh Shapiro? Why don't you mention him?
I like Josh Shapiro. I don't know enough about him, so I really had become focused early on Beshears and Whitmer. But I do like governors. I think you would probably agree with me on that, Greg. Like, if you go into managing a budget of a country and you've had no real experience, that's got to be kind of mesmerizing. And one of the things I think that makes really good government officials is people that have actually exercised a lot of the skills ahead of time that gets you there. And, that's one of the problems, I think, with Trump. I think he's trying to apply business tactics to running a country, and they're not the same.
Well, I hope your first choice is the one Elizabeth Warren. I hope they go with her, to be frank.
Oh, that's what the Republicans want. That's what
I
you want.
wasn't talking about Elizabeth Warren running for president. I was
earlier,
talking about Elizabeth Warren being the
messenger.
leader in Congress. I think she would be good for new leadership there.
Jeff in Rochester called in to say Dems are bringing a knife to a gunfight. When will they really stand up? Mike in
I
Penfield.
100% agree.
Mike in Penfield says what Doge is doing has nothing to do with efficiency. It's more about retribution. And got just a number of comments from listeners saying that they just want to see more honest and direct responses. Not a lot of love for Senator Schumer, I have to say, in the emails today. So, Jerry, as we start to wind down here, there's been a lot of talk about what's happened in 45 days, what's happened in the first 6 weeks here. But this is a 4-year term. There is a midterm election still to come. And sometimes, I've got a couple emails from people saying everyone needs to calm down. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I don't know if you agree with that, Jerry, but how do you feel about this?
This is not the time to calm down. This is the worst time to calm down. That's the problem.
Why do you
Where's
say
the
that?
heartbeat? Because I honestly think that there is a real risk of us, like the motorcycle philosophy exercise I mentioned earlier. Democracy is very sneakily and slowly being dismantled right around us. So Trump is invoking executive orders that show no understanding of how government works and actually what the law is. There's a lot of legal contests going on right now. So he really has broken the law, and he can't do some things. Congress controls the funding, and I don't know if he knows that. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I feel like Democrats need to lean into what their party stands for. They're just constantly – I didn't even like the choice of Slotkin for the rebuttal. I just thought that was a mistake. She's going – Bill Clinton, moderate, working across the aisle. That's good in some respects, but not when your house is burning. So I really do feel like their messaging is frustrating me. As a former press secretary, I was like on the top of all the issues, making sure that I was writing things for the congressman that represented what our constituents wanted. Okay, let me ask you this. Did we vote to take Greenland and Panama Canal? Did our constituents vote to rename the Gulf of Mexico? Did we vote to buy Gaza? Did we vote to have Trump self-proclaim himself a king and put it out on official White House social media on the cover of Time magazine?
I think he's trying to troll you with that one. But I know you don't think it's funny. Greg, briefly, before I grab a phone call here, should we be grabbing Gaza? Is that what you want? You want us to run Gaza?
I don't want us to run Gaza, but I thought it was a very compelling discussion to have that, hey, if we have investment in there, maybe it changes the game. We've been playing this game for, 70 years? And it's just...
It's not a game. I mean, it's...
Well, you know my use of the phrase.
But
Okay,
they're trying to run the world like a business, and it's not a business.
Well, but
He
Greg
doesn't understand
is arguing
diplomacy and
that this
decorum.
is a different approach that will spur a different result.
possibly a different outcome. Right. I mean, we've been doing the same thing over and over. Isn't that Einstein's definition of insanity? So it is a different approach. Is it the right approach?
But it's
I
not
don't know,
our
but it's
land.
working.
It's not Donald Trump's land. It's not my land. It's
But
not
we're
yours.
But we haven't taken it yet. This is all discussion. And how do we make it happen?
But I think when we put Trump in again, it's this definition of insanity. You put him in a second time expecting different results. He was divisive the first time, and he encouraged them to come and break the windows of Congress to come in, and then he sets them free on the first day. I believe in law and consequences. And there's so many. I've worked for veterans, Greg, almost my entire career. I have so much love for veterans. Many members of my friends and family are veterans, and I don't really appreciate the way that was done. I also don't think I have a disabled son. I don't appreciate the threats to Social Security and Medicaid funding. We vote for things to make our lives better. Government is supposed to be good government that makes our lives better. This feels to me like it's enriching Trump's coffers, and it makes me sick.
I got to grab Jeff, who's on 4 there. No, Teddy. Hey, Teddy, go ahead.
Hi, Evan. Thank you for taking my call. I want to ask your guests, do they believe that the United States is representative of its citizens outside of those in the position of oligarchy?
Do they believe that
do they believe that our democracy represents the interests of persons who do not make hundreds of millions of dollars?
I suspect, Teddy, you do not.
I would argue that the trends economically over I would say longer than 20 years, really affirm the belief that it's us versus them from the perspective of an ownership class trying to impose greater controls over our democracy, but also kickbacks and exemptions for themselves to hoard wealth while paying unincreasing wages. It has put all of the people in the bottom 60% in a very unrepresented position.
All right, let me just, because about 45 seconds apiece. Greg Sadwick, what do you think?
I think he's right. Washington, D.C. is an oligarchy, and I think that's a problem. And we are underrepresented, but we have the power to change that, and we don't. 95% of incumbents go back to Congress. We put them there. We have to change that. But I look at a CBS News poll, and 77% of the people that watched last night thought that it was an effective method that Trump's doing. So
yeah, it was a popular speech.
It was.
It was
That's
popular
the
speech.
people that answer the phone, though. It's not all of Americans. You got to look at how.
It's not a perfect poll of all
poll
of
is
Americans.
what?
It's true, but for the people who watched it, a lot of them liked what they saw. Greg's not wrong. By the way, is Trump an oligarch? Is Musk an oligarch? Greg?
No.
No.
I mean,
Okay.
they're oligarchs, but they're not using that to. I don't think they're using it to enhance. Trump was the only president that left office poorer than when he came in. I mean, that's not a wise oligarch.
Jerry?
Well, he's filed bankruptcy 6 or 7 times, so I think it's par for course. I think that the people that like Trump are doing something in psychology where you don't want to accept the truth of your pick, and so you're just doubling down. You're just going to stick with it. And I think that those ruckus town halls that we saw are beginning to crack the armor that he's built himself around. So.
Well, we'll see, Jerry, if Democrats follow in the direction that you want them to go.
Or Republicans, like Ronald Reagan's turning over in his grave right now. Come on, guys.
Jerry, thank you for making time for the program. Jerry Lynn Sparks,
Thank you.
former Congressional Press Secretary. Greg Sadwick, thank you for making time for the program.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Jerry.
Former congressional candidate and a local business person, and we'll see if there's more in the future for him. But for now, come back and talk sometime.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it.
And we've got more coming up here in just a second.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from GreenSpark Solar, serving the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes regions for over 20 years. GreenSpark Solar is dedicated to helping people power their homes and businesses with local solar power and battery storage backup. More at greensparksolar.com.